We finished by looking at two quick examples which demonstrate how to apply the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation. Now, the first step when applying the quadratic formula is identifying the values of a, b, and c that are used in that quadratic formula. So let's consider the example, negative 7y squared minus 14y minus 6 equals 0. And we are going to find the values of a, b, and c, and also b squared minus 4ac. b squared minus 4ac is simply the quantity that's under the square root. So we are simply going to identify a, b, c, and b squared minus 4ac for this equation. Those are the key elements that we use when applying the quadratic formula. Alright, so in order to use the quadratic formula, our equation has to first be set equal to 0. And our equation is set equal to 0. So we can proceed and just pull off the values a, b, and c. Notice a is the coefficient on x squared. So for our particular problem, a is the coefficient on the y squared, and so a is simply the number negative 7. Be sure to include the negative sign in front of the 7. b is our value that's on the x term. In this case, b is negative 14 on the y. And so our value for b is simply negative 14. And c is our constant term. And in this example, c is also a negative number. It's negative 6. The last step then that we are being asked to do is to find the value b squared minus 4ac. To do that, we simply take the values that we've obtained and plug them into this expression. So b squared minus 4ac, well, we use these values here, and so b squared is negative 14 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 7, times c, which is negative 6. So we are simply evaluating this expression, negative 14 squared minus 4 times negative 7 times negative 6. Now, order of operations tells us we need to first work out negative 14 squared. Negative 14 squared is simply 196. Negative 14 times negative 14. And then the multiplication must be done out. So I take negative 4 times negative 7. Those two together give me 28. And then I multiply 28 times negative 6. So that gives me negative 168. 196 minus 168 is simply 28. And so for our particular problem, b squared minus 4ac is simply 28. These key components will then be substituted into the quadratic formula if we were using it to solve the quadratic equation. Let's take a look at one more example. Let's consider the equation 5n equals n squared plus 4. We want to find the values of a, b, c, and b squared minus 4ac for this particular equation. Why do we want to do that? Well, because this is the first step in applying the quadratic formula. And our quadratic formula allows us to solve this quadratic equation. Now, in order to apply the quadratic formula, we first have to have our equation set equal to 0. Notice this equation is not set equal to 0, so the very first thing we have to do in order to pull off the values a, b, and c is to rewrite this equation so that it's set equal to 0. Now, how are we going to rewrite that? we need to bring this 5n term to the right side. So I'm going to subtract 5n from the left and 5n from the right. That gives us a new equation where all the terms are on one side of the equation set equal to 0. That means we have n squared minus 5n plus 4 equals 0. All right, so now our quadratic equation is set equal to 0, and we can go about finding the values a, b, c, b squared minus 4ac. Let's start with a. Recall a is the coefficient on x squared. Well, notice our n squared has no coefficient. But technically it does, it's just not written. N squared is equivalent to 1 times n squared. So the coefficient a, or the value of a, is simply 1. B is our coefficient on the middle term, right? The x term, or the n term in this case. And for our example, b is negative 5. C is our constant term, in this case, positive 4. And then b squared minus 4ac, well, that's the expression we obtain by plugging these values into b squared minus 4ac. So we have b, which is negative 5 squared, minus 4, times a, which is 1, times c, which is 4. And if we work this out using order of operations, we first do negative 5 squared, which is negative 5 times negative 5, or positive 25. And then negative 4 times 1 times 4 simply is negative 4 times 4, which is minus 16. So we have 25 minus 16, which is 9. So the value of b squared minus 4ac for this particular problem is 9.